Welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior out to light. I'm honored today to have my good friend, Jeremy Hunt, on with us, owner and operator of Minnesota Delivery Solutions. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daryl. It's awesome to be here. And of course, a huge part of what's awesome is just being a little bit of part of your journey. And I know this is an exciting time for you as you're ready to launch the next phase of your business.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we've been friends for what, almost 20 years now, 15, 18,
Yep.
somewhere, a long time. Been definitely seen the ups and downs, right?
That's right. But we're like wine, right? We age well. We're looking pretty good.
Well. Right. At least you age well.
I think.
I know that early on in your life, you were a mission, right? You did missionary work, you and your family?
Yeah, we did. I started out pretty young, had a life-changing experience doing a summer missions trip, like typical teen mission type of thing when I was 17, and that helped set the direction for my life. And more or less, I was in that world, for quite some time, and had a chance to, when I was single, when I was married, with kids, we had a chance to go all over the world and participate in a lot of different experiences with different missions organizations, and then even locally here in Minneapolis, we were part of different missions-based projects. For about 5 years, we were part of a multi-ethnic church plant in St. Paul, which was an incredible experience. So yeah, that was a huge part of our lives for quite some time. And in many ways, it still shapes how I do business and how I live my life now, even if it's taken a little bit different of a form and direction as things have evolved.
You did that with children though, right? Traveling all over the world. It wasn't just you and your wife.
Yeah,
it was
right.
So
right. Yeah, I can always remember it was the summer after 9/11, and of course, understandably so, family and friends were like, maybe you shouldn't go to that part of the world. But we spent a whole summer with a whole team in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and we had a chance to work with kids, and we brought our own kids. We had, I have 4 sons now. The second son was, I don't know, 6 months old, roughly 9 months old. And then we had another one still in diapers, just about 2.5 or something like that. And we went and did it. And I often tell people, besides not always looking at everything you see in the news as the only thing that's happening in the country, I often said, well, in that particular country or space, there are millions of kids that are in playgrounds right now and enjoying life. And not to undermine the fact that, yeah, sometimes you obviously got to be careful. But yeah, we kind of towed them along all over the place.
And then when you got back, you started your own business again, or where did that lead you to?
Yeah, actually, it was during that trip in the summer of 2002. By that point, yeah, it was 2002, I think. That part of my journey was feeling like every time I tried something in a typical ministry kind of format, I never quite felt like it was quite what I was supposed to be doing. And for the sake of time, I'll just shorten it by saying it was through some experiences on that trip that I felt like I was supposed to be involved in missions. And there still is a lot of talk about doing business as mission and whatnot. And through that, I realized that I was more suited to be an entrepreneur and to be involved in business. And I took that same passion that I had for, ministry. What is ministry? Really, it's about caring and loving people and showing God's love to people. And it was almost like that just became part of, that became the focus. And like anything, as we both know, sometimes when you have a passion for something or an idea, it doesn't happen overnight. So I just had the plan. I was gonna do business, and it took a couple years to find something that worked. But I went into business with a couple friends of mine and helped take an existing courier and delivery company that still exists to this day, and joined the partnership. And that was in 2005. So it took a little while, even though there were other things that I did. I started reading business books and trying different things, but that's the first thing that really stuck.
But you're an entrepreneur at heart, and I know this just from our time together. Was your family and some of your closer friends supportive of that, or were you kind of?
Yeah, I would say so. Uh, Definitely. And then there were certainly those that weren't. And let's be honest, I think over, you can fast forward 20 plus years, and it was rough. I mean, I spent most of that time struggling, and money was tight. And as of course, if I were to apply the lessons, especially that I've learned in the last couple of years, to much of that time, it was less about even things that directly impacted business. But if I took like issues around boundaries and a whole host of other things and applied them to business, it would have made a huge difference. But nevertheless, in direct answer to your question, I would say there actually was a lot of support over the years, and I don't regret, like in some kind of I don't know, negative way, but I wish I had learned things sooner to be able to make it a better experience and not drag things out so long,
So you came through a period of time where you gave up your business and moved your family to go back into ministry to become a pastor at a church in Oklahoma, right?
That's correct. And that, of course, wasn't the original plan. It was, if I have to be honest now, and I can only say this after going through a lot, is to say, you know what, that was like kind of like my version of a midlife crisis, even though I think I was only about 30, late 30s at the time. I just gave up and I left. And of course, when we do those things in life, so we can certainly have our talking points. So we can always have our talking points, but the reality is behind all that, I gave up and I just wanted out. But what happened at that time, like, I feel like most of my change over the last couple of years was a spiritual journey, or ended up being a spiritual journey. But in a way, at that time, I had a different form of a spiritual journey. And what it led me to do was, I thought I was going to go down to Oklahoma City to start another business. And in fact, I did. I helped start another business down there. And I did all of the things that I was supposed to do. I signed up the exact amount of customers, but it was like the spigot wasn't flowing. And it was, to me, just a real clear sign that I was, it wasn't out of lack of effort or ability to do the job. It just wasn't the right thing. And then you fast forward over a number of months, and we had been attending a church down there, and I felt like I was supposed to be a part of it. And so I did. And it was, in a way, it felt like a miraculous kind of story where a nobody hadn't even directly been involved in ministry, especially on the level of like a mega church, became a campus pastor. And I definitely can look back at that and see how we made an impact. Our entire family made an impact. But the bottom line is, I didn't have the leadership skills and the ability. And now I know, I can honestly say, and I don't say this negatively towards them or even myself, but I just at the time I had the culture, but I don't think I would have had the culture. It wasn't really who I was. But nevertheless, I take responsibility for getting into something that was really over my head. And so I have many great memories, but it was definitely, as they always say, in situations like this, I did not have the right seat on the bus at all, and it was time to pack out.
So then you came back to Minnesota, and
Yeah, I ended up coming back to Minnesota, and during at least one other significant time where we had done some travel in different parts of the world, uh, Minnesota always was like home, and it still is home. It's the place to come back to, and despite the freezing cold weather, it's just a place it's in my blood. I don't have any tattoos yet, but I've thought if I was ever going to get a tattoo, I would put something related to even the road systems of Minneapolis right on my arm, because it just signifies so much of who I am, and even what I'm a part of practically in my business now. But yeah, we came back to Minnesota in 2015, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. That technically wasn't a great idea, but I was in a tough space, really disappointed by what had happened.
you actually
And
spent that time in a downward spiral, right?
it was the beginning of the downward spiral for sure.
But that was a part of your life that you also hid from family and friends, not necessarily your immediate wife and brother, but those of us that were close to you at that time. You didn't you didn't really reach out and let us know that you were on that slide, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that maybe in some small ways you knew a little bit, but I even kept it hidden from almost everybody, because sometimes it's, the difficult things in life are embarrassing to talk about. And I also just thought things would change, and for me, even though, yeah, there was some difficult things going on, ultimately, all of the, and I can only speak for myself here. It's just like, I know that, we look at business, and there were so many ups and downs. I didn't really realize at the time how important financial stability was, or not moving around the country so much. And so even though I'm sure there were other things, I know there were other things, but as much as I can look within and look back and learn a lot, I can say, yeah, all of that instability and such has a way to impact a marriage. And it wasn't until it was right around 2016 when I realized that there were issues, and then those issues kind of like, it was up and down, but ultimately it led to a place where, there's so much that we could talk about even in that 4 or 5 year period, but let's just say, I think what you're referencing especially accumulated in 2020, because one significant thing that we also need to talk about is there were other failures. Like coming back to Minnesota was probably just the first one. I didn't realize it, but I rejoined the business I was a part of, and that also wasn't a good fit. And I ended up going through a bankruptcy, and then of course started realizing that I was in a tough place with my marriage, and so you fast forward to 2019, 2020, early 2020, and when you are pretty sure that things aren't gonna get fixed, I started going through some, for some reason. I guess it's not a complete shocker, but it was the marriage ending that was like the final blow for me. And by that trip that I was on with you, we both know what that looked like, falling apart, crying in the bathroom. And over the course of that month, I couldn't sleep, but started using alcohol in a way that I had never before, to actually cut the pain out. And yeah, but it was that final blow, and realizing that I needed help. Like I can't emotionally handle my life if I don't get help. And that's when everything changed. Yeah.
Well, I know that you had hit rock bottom at that point. You know, we were there in Mexico together, and I finally saw, you know, where you were in your journey. And then we started working your way back. And so, you actually cathartically wrote a chapter in a book, correct?
Yes. Yes. That came after, it's, we all know there's different kinds of time. There's chronological time. Um, so chronologically speaking, from that November 1st, when well, it was technically the weekend prior, Halloween weekend, but from November 1st to April of the following year, so 6 months time frame, to this day, it still blows my mind how much progress and how much change happened within me. And of course, that's the part that we would need um, a whole lot more time to talk about, because there were so many lessons learned. There were so many things that happened, but it was that journey. It was that transformation on every fiber of my being that led me to a place that, and I know it was because ultimately, I'm going to quickly try to tell that story, part of the story, but I know it was ultimately just this excitement and this, I think I've always been someone, I think we're all this way, but when you've been changed by something, I never want to keep something to myself. Like you just feel like you have to share it. I know that's a huge part of what you're doing with your business is you have, well, we'll get to that. But we're similar in that way. But I remember I was on a flight. This is after I had already been reading Paul Coelho's book,
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist,
Yeah, great book.
and so it was a fun time in life, especially because I was at such a place where I was so ready to try to figure out like what was next. I mean, I knew I was going to stay in business, but it was like more about like, well, yeah, like what is my life purpose? What is my, what am I doing? And it was through that book that in a few other things that happened, where books and reading and soaking up all this information was so meaningful in my life, that I just remember it just came to me. I was like, I guess I'm going to start writing. And remember, this wasn't me saying, I guess I'm going to be a famous author. This is no, that's not the goal. I don't think it ever should be the goal. It's especially in the creative things that are within us. It's if you feel that, you're supposed to do something about it. You're supposed to take action. You're supposed to get it out there, and so, and then there was a series of things that just came into my life where there were some opportunities to be a part of writing a chapter in a business leadership book. And I just felt like I was kind of following those signs and felt like I was supposed to do it. And I said yes. And it's amazing because by the time I was with you for your wedding, I had already started to write, and I only was responsible for one chapter, but that one chapter took so much time. And it was partly because I'm not a professional writer, but it's also partly because the things that I wanted to talk about in the book were so important to me. And of course I had to nail it down to only 2 lessons, and I wanted to talk about 20, but I only could talk about a couple different life-changing lessons. But it was also really important to make sure every single word was meaningful and it meant something. But I'll tell you what, just like so many things that we do in life, even going back to missions work, so many times people come back from missions trips and they say that they were changed in the process more than anything they felt like they could ever do for someone else. And that's the same thing for me in this book. I was changed. I had to invest money into writing this. And to me, it became one of the best forms of therapy. And, Jordan Peterson, there's plenty of other different people that talk about writing your story. Well, there's something obviously true about that, because there's something about, putting 6 pages or so down on paper that forced me to work through even more things and write about it. And if that can make a difference in someone else's life, great.
Yeah. So, and it was also I mean, you and I have been friends, and I've been kind of coaching and mentoring you for 15 years, but it was at that time where we actually started an actual true business coaching relationship.
Right.
And some of those pieces and processes became cathartic for you to write that chapter. You said you had two main points you were making in that. What was your most definitive point that you made and got out of that? Because you went, and I saw firsthand, you went from very rock bottom to excelling very well in a very short period of time. And it's because you started to do the inner work and you started to do the pieces that healed you. You were no longer trying to heal your external life. You were healing your internal life. And it just made a profound change in who you are and where you went.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm going to give you this example because it's a business example. You know, sometimes people, as they started seeing my current business, at least do well enough to pay your bills. You know, what is success anyway? But when it started doing a little bit better, you know, you get a lot of like, wow, that's amazing. And you know, maybe a little bit of the ego, hopefully, and pride is out of me. But I remember saying, you know, when I started this time, I was bankrupt. I had a older family minivan that was burning oil. I had just enough money for about a tank of gas. I wasn't getting hired by the big corporations, and I had to pay my bills. I had to feed my family, or attempt to. And my dad had already paid for at least a month of rent. I was at the bottom of the barrel. And it's a great time to start because you can only go up, right? As they say.
Yep.
Well, in a way, that's where I was at when it was time to start life change. I was devastated. I was emotionally bankrupt. I had way too much need for external things. And one of the very first principles that I learned, and this is now answering your question about what I talked, the key lesson in my book was acceptance. And I'll never forget when I started literally just reading about what acceptance was. And I mean, you could write multiple books on just that one idea. And the reason why I also chose that was it was so meaningful in my story. But it was also, I've discovered that it is really the doorway to so many other lessons. You can't be resisting and essentially still participating with the negative. You can't get to the other side unless you've accepted. But for me, I'll never forget, like it was almost like a light switched on. Like I don't have to. It doesn't mean you're agreeing with the negative things or your life situation, because that's something you can't always control. But as I started understanding acceptance, it was amazing the amount of peace that just kind of washed over me because I was able to start letting go. And so yeah, and of course I could talk more about that. I talk about it in the book, but that was the first lesson that I started learning.
And I admire the spirit, like, because you truly embody what I consider a warrior spirit. You know how to pick yourself up from wherever to go wherever you're needing to go. You don't allow the pressures and the constraints of the hardships that life has been for you to make you give up and quit. You know, you actually came back from all that stuff and started your own business again for another time, and you've taken it from zero to very successful in a relatively short period of time, within a year or two. And now it's just exponentially going to be better because you never gave up. So you truly embody what I consider to be a warrior spirit, with that never give up, have to do it kind of attitude. And I appreciate being a part of that journey and watching where you go. If you were to leave one, maybe two nuggets for anyone out there who's struggling, and trying to make it, but they have this purpose and passion in their heart that they just want to get out there, what would you tell those people?
I would tell them to, for some reason, if I'm thinking about it, I might as well use this as an example. Maybe it's important. Even though it's kind of like a sales coaching kind of thing. So many times when we need a new connection or need to jumpstart anything, you just got to get out there. You gotta get out. You gotta be with people. You got to do something. And what that means for me is you got to take action, and you've got to call Daryl, someone like you, call you, get talking with someone. As you know, before it even formulated into brick and mortar, so to speak, called Praxis, we had spent 15 plus years talking about these principles. And then it took me being in a very difficult place to start to see that I needed change. It was obvious. So because you asked me what would be someone that's in a similar place, and if you're not, I would say, don't wait. Don't wait for the tragedy. Don't wait to feel like you've exhausted all other options. Everyone knows that, but unfortunately it is that feeling stuck, that pain, that can become suddenly your greatest opportunity and gift. But it means you got to take action. You got to pick up that phone call. You got to start asking for help. But you do got to start following the right path, and it involves, changing the way we think, and getting that help. And then I know I'm kind of not just giving one quick answer, but and then just choosing to go through it, because I think most of my life, when not to say that I never just stuck something out, but there were too many pivotal times in my life I would kind of go around things. Oh, this isn't working. I guess got to go over here. What about deciding today that thing that you can't get out of your head is your purpose, and you have to make it work? And that doesn't mean you have to do what I did in the past, which is settle for less financially. No, you still got to support your family. You got to make sure that those around you feel emotionally and financially secure as you pursue your purpose. And I believe there's a way to do it that way. You know what I mean? But it's definitely, another huge thing that's been helpful is, as we've talked, you're always kind of been helping me to, just get back on that course, continue to keep moving forward. And so it does take community. It does take, you've always, we were brothers and friends, and you were my coach. So we have a more unique way of bringing this together. But that's what I like so much about what you've been able to provide for me, and is that you and I know that if you've been that way with me, it's not just because we've been friends for so long. It's like that's who you are. Is you bring that, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure that you include more holistic kind of words, but I know that that's who you are. Is that it's, I think that we've learned in our lives now is that there's not just one thing. Like, it's not just this area of our lives. It's like, and you kind of bring your business, like you think about your story, like you bring your business experience, you bring your psychology, your spiritual, like it all kind of comes together and helping people move forward. And that's so important. It's mind, body, soul, right?
Mind, body, soul. Absolutely. Now I do want to, as we end, I know, because I do know your, story a little more. I do know that your mother and your brother don't embody the entrepreneurial spirit that you do. And I know that sometimes when you stepped out into that entrepreneurial space, they brought some fear and doubt to the forefront, right? What in you stepped aside from all that and said, no, this is my journey, and I'm going to take it in spite of those fears and doubts that you're presenting me with?
Yeah, I think part of it is just recognizing your own place and being confident in that. When I mean place, I don't mean to be vague. Like, you just have to know who you are and what you are meant to do, and that's even true for the other people too. My brother knows that he isn't an entrepreneur, but he's always been very supportive and been integrally connected to some of my entrepreneurial ventures that have been a significant part of making them, be a success. And so, but that same thing is true for me. Like, I just have to know what I am meant for, and there's balance, I suppose, because I think that there's always a way, even if the money's slow, there's still a way to ensure you're doing what you need to do, and hey, in this day and age of a lot of gig economy things like Uber and Lyft or whatever, I'm grateful that there's people that work with me now that are pursuing their dreams and fulfilling that same kind of role in my business. I'm not sure if I've answered the question directly, other than to say, like, we're all just on our individual story, and other people need to follow what is inside of them, and I just have to follow what's inside of me, and do that. And unfortunately, I have gotten to a place, fortunately, like, thank God, this time around it's kind of undeniable, that it's working, and yet I still have other things. I have not arrived. There's other things that I know I'm meant for, and once again, I have to be able, if I'm willing to go after them, to apply that same grit, hard work. One of the things that, well, now that I started talking, I don't want to get on another whole long story here, but if there's any message I could send to people that have started in the same way that I started a number of years ago, is at that time, I'm not saying I wouldn't use this terminology anymore. I believe in callings. I think there's a lot of other words we could put to that. But just because you're called doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen. Just as nobody would say, just because you have a great idea, that anything is going to automatically happen. It's going to take the same amount of hard work and grit and determination and likely a bunch of failure to be able to get where you want to go. And you have to be willing to sign up for that. And some people, and I don't fault people for this. You just got to know who you are. Some people are just happy to talk about things. And if you're happy to talk about what you want to do, cool. I kind of, like, great. But at some point you got to stop talking and start doing, and you got to get out there and make it happen. And nobody's going to do it for you. And if you're not, an entrepreneur needs to put the right people around them, for sure. But you're not an entrepreneur if you're not going to be willing to do that hard work, so.
Absolutely. And I think that's true of even if you're not an entrepreneur, you have to do the work. And I think, you've embodied that, and it's showing up in your life. If people want to get a hold of you, either for, Minnesota deliveries, I'll drop a link in the interview after, and I'll also put a link there if they want to check out your chapter of the book, so that they can read more in depth of the story, because I know it's powerful, and the chapter that you wrote is very impactful, and I think would help a lot of people. So I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and your journey, and many blessings to you along the way as you continue to walk your path, my brother.
Thank you as well, and really excited about how all of this is formulating for you. And I know a lot of people are going to be impacted by it, and it'll be exciting to watch it grow and develop. So thank you so much for including me.
Yeah, well, the goal here is to get everyone's story out there, to My goal is to help your mess become your message, so it can become a survival guide for somebody else.
Mhm.
And I appreciate all of that you did in your time today, and we'll catch you down the road. Okay.
All right. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you, brother.